Thanks for listening to our podcast unMetered. As a member-owned, not-for-profit electric cooperative, our focus is on providing affordable, reliable, safe electricity and outstanding member service. One way that we're doing that is by providing more avenues of communication to you, our member. Through the podcast, we hope that you will be able to find some helpful hints, tips, and things to help you conserve energy, as well as some informational pieces that will help you understand what it means to be a member. Thanks again for listening to unMetered. Extremely excited to have you guys back again, of course. This week I'm flying solo. Josh is out hanging out with the kids in preparation for the school year that's about to start. Of course, we want to remind everybody that with school starting, we do have a community relations coordinator, Jay Sanders, who gets out into the schools. He teaches things about electrical safety. He talks about there's some writing contests that we do throughout the year for the Washington Youth Tour and for the scholarships, and there's several things that we do. Of course, if you're interested in that information, you can actually go and find out more about our educational programs at mtemc.com/education. So as you guys are getting ready for school, I hope it's a great school year for you. Some are starting back this week, some next week, and I think some have already started already. So I hope you guys have fun with that. Before we get started with today's podcast, actually, I just want to remind everyone about Sharing Change. It's the easiest good thing you can do. You can actually enroll by going to sharingchange.org. You can also call our member support specialists, which is 877-777-9020. That number actually will also allow you to make payments. If you got a question about your bill, right now it's been a very hot few weeks. And so that's something that if you've got a question about, you can always call in and they can help you walk through that. They can also assist you with MyMTMC, which is our new app and web portal that rolled out earlier in July. So again, check out those things if you're interested. Also, of course, we've got our outage number at 877-777-9111. And that number will allow you to report an outage. It'll also allow you to get updates on your outage. Of course, this information is also available by going to the MyMTMC app in the Google Play or Apple store. And so you can actually check on your outages, you can check on your usage, and you can report outages in, pretty much in real time. You'll also be alerted as to when your outage is cleared through that app as well. So again, check those things out. Speaking of outages, I want to talk a little bit about something that kind of goes along with that idea of outages, of problems with the lines, and that's electrical shock. Electrical shock is something that oftentimes we don't think about. Obviously, our linemen are very aware of it. Those that are working with our power lines, it's very aware. But as members and as consumers of electricity, we take for granted often the safety that is involved in putting those things together. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the electrical shock and kind of some of the differences in there. And so, if you dial way back to probably, 5th grade, 4th grade, somewhere in that range in your elementary school years, at least for me, it was around the 4th grade, we talked about electricity and kind of how it works and sort of, what to be aware of in there. Of course, we always hear that it's not the volts that kill you, it's the current. But there's some truth in that, and there's also a little bit of clarification that's needed for it. So some of the basics of electricity is that there's four kind of different pieces to it, four basics of electricity. One is the voltage, one is the amperage, otherwise known as the current. You've got the resistance, and you've got the circuit. So these four pieces are kind of like the fundamentals of electricity. Voltage is a measure of the electrical force that seems to push the current along. So, of course, that's kind of a matter of how powerful it is. So a higher volt is very dangerous. You'll see signs that say high voltage and caution, especially along any type of underground transformers, anything that has substations, those types of things have that as well. And you can kind of think of voltage like water stored in a water tower. Because the water tower is so high, the water will have more force behind it as it comes down the pipe. In the sake of this analogy, similar to gravity pulling it down. So the higher the water, the more force is behind it. If the same water was placed on lower level, it wouldn't have as much force. It's not as great. Now, amperage or current often is referred to as current by those in the electrical field and engineers. Um, it's kind of similar to the diameter of the pipe in our water analogy. So where voltage is how high and how forceful the water is coming through, the current or amperage is about how much of that is coming through. So if the pipe's diameter is smaller, a smaller amount of water will flow. If you need more, the more diameter it is on your water pipes, the faster the current, the more is coming through. Similar situation with electricity, of course. The higher, the larger the electrical lines are, the cables that are run, the more current they're going to have. And then, of course, mixing with voltage, they kind of can create a very dangerous situation. Now, we talked a little bit about resistance. It's one of those that it's the amount of opposition in the flow of electricity. So that is something that you'll run into, especially when you see, if something's heating up. For instance, if you've got a bad cable on your on an electrical extension cord, your resistance is creating that heat that's coming off of it. For instance, I've got a laptop that often warms up. The actual cable warms up. I was able to replace that and found out that there was actually a short in there, and it was creating a resistance and making the heat off of it. And then, of course, the circuit, which is what makes a light switch work. When you turn on a light switch, it completes the circuit. When you turn it off, it breaks that circuit. So electricity is going to flow in kind of a loop. It's going from one place to another. Now, there's a few common mistakes that happen with construction, with homes, and any type of do-it-yourself type of situations. The one of which is just overloading your circuit breaker. So, you're working on, you've decided to do some sort of project at home. You've decided to do an addition, and you've done it yourself, and you've gone in, you've ran extra wires into your circuit breaker. Of course, we always recommend that you have a certified electrician come in, take care of that. Make sure that everything is put in correctly, and that you're not going to run into those electrical shock issues, that the volts and the currents, and that there's not any resistance that's going to create a problem in your home. And of course, you can see those issues. I recently had a problem in an apartment that I was in, that the GFCI outlet was actually tripping consistently. And I didn't think anything of it because, of course, this was before I was really working here and was aware of what that meant. But when the GFCI circuit keeps on tripping, what ends up happening is it's telling you that there is a leakage somewhere in the system. And if you just keep on resetting that little button, maybe it's your bathroom, maybe it's your kitchen or your outdoor GFCI plug, what you're doing is you're actually forcing you're forcing that power to go somewhere. You're making it keep running on a broken circuit, or you're creating some resistance in there that is unnecessary. And so what ended up happening in my case was I almost had an electrical outlet catch on fire. Luckily, I was able to see it before it happened. I actually could see a little bit of a burn mark on the outlet plug itself. So some of this was because it was an older outlet. Every now and then you're going to want to update those, and of course, if you're going to be replacing those, if they're under 5 feet, you're going to want to replace those with a tamper-resistant outlet. They're pretty easy to take care of, and so I've in my new home, I actually went through and replaced all of mine and made sure they were good to go there. But again, being aware of what electricity is doing in your home and being aware of how it can create a dangerous situation for you, for your children, or for your pets is going to be paramount in making sure that you're safe. Now, the other thing that can cause electrical shock, that can cause an issue at home besides overloading your circuit breaker or having a bad GFCI plug or having a leak in the system that's tripping that GFCI over and over again, is going to be when you overload the outlet with extension cords. I don't know how many of you guys have seen. I've been at friends' homes, and behind the entertainment center, you'll see a surge protector with maybe another surge protector attached to it. Or maybe you see a surge protector that has several different power equipment attached to it in a garage or a construction site. These are things that you're going to want to be aware of, because if all of those devices that are plugged in start pulling and they pull more current than what the surge protectors and what the circuit as a whole can handle, what you end up doing is you can end up catching something on fire because it's pulling in more power than it needs, and it creates a lot of heat, it creates a lot of resistance. An instance of that, I actually was working on down in Alabama, I was working on a sort of a film set, and one of our lights kept tripping out. It kept tripping the breakers, and we didn't understand what was going on. Well, of course, we were using an older light system that required almost 12 amps to run. And so it was pulling all that. However, on the same circuit, we had another light that was pulling another 12. And so that was something where it was overheating it. The outlet was starting to overheat. The circuit kept on tripping over and over again to the point where it actually tripped the entire set. So, again, being aware of how much you're putting on each individual outlet, being aware of your GFCI plugs, being aware of those circuits and how they kind of interact with one another. Those are going to be some easy ways to make sure that you're staying safe at home. So, what kind of injuries can happen because of that? Obviously, one of the first thing you think of with electricity is a shock, and so there is a couple different types of shocks that we think of. We think of electrical shock and we think of electrocuted. All right, now those terms aren't always interchangeable. Electrocuted typically refers to death. It typically refers to an electrical shock that leads to death. All right, that's on one end of the spectrum. An electrical shock, on the other hand, could be as simple as you simply touched maybe the end of a battery wrong. You touch both ends, or something like that, where it's not nearly as intensive. It still hurts. It still shocks. It's those little buzzers that we think of in people's hands as a prank. But again, there's kind of two different approaches to electrical injuries. Now, the electric shock is caused by current passing through the body, and the lethality. You know what? I usually make up terms in this thing, but I don't think I'm making this one. The lethality of an electric shock is kind of dependent on the current, the amps, the duration of it, the voltage, and the pathway. So, for instance, an electrical shock that goes maybe from your hand down through your foot is not going to be as dangerous as, say, one that goes from your hand to your hand, because it's not crossing through your chest and by your heart and those types of things. So, and the other piece of that also is how long you're getting a hold of it. So oftentimes with electrical shocks, the initial shock is not what causes the injury, but instead it's the fact that once you've been shocked, maybe your hand grabs a hold of the wire and you're unable to let go. And then it's a duration of a lot of electricity coming into your body. And then, of course, the volts, as we were talking about earlier, about how fast it's coming down, how forceful it's coming through. For instance, an overhead power line has got a lot of current, it's got a lot of voltage. However, if you look at, say, an LED light or circuit or something like that, something that's using maybe half an amp, it's not going to be overly dangerous, as long term. I don't recommend, getting shocked or anything like that. No one enjoys that. But your body can actually take a range of shock before it gets injured. We think of this almost like a defibrillator is a good example. Your body sometimes needs a little bit of a jolt to get back up. It's not going to cause fatal because, again, defibrillators are designed to give you just enough to get your heart started again. However, if you think about the electrical currents, and in milliamps, so not even in full amps, but in milliamps, you're talking about 1 to 5 milliamps. You're gonna feel it. Okay, it's more like one of those little shock pins, those shock buttons, where it makes you kind of jump a little bit, and then as you keep going up, it's going to get more severe. So 5 to 10 milliamps is you're not going to be able to let go. So to me, a good example of that would be like a cattle fence or something, some sort of electric fence for livestock that is enough that if you touch it with your hand, a lot of times your hand has a natural tendency to close up into a fist, and this can be pretty dangerous. So, of course, whenever you're dealing with those, the old trick that my grandfather told me was to touch it with a piece of grass, a long blade of grass, and you can kind of run it down there, and you can kind of feel a little bit of a tingle to see it. So again, that kind of allows you to know whether it's hot or not. But 5 to 10 is getting a little more dangerous. Once you go over 10 milliamps, you're talking about increasing pain. Breathing may become difficult, and then anything over 50 is probably fatal. Okay, again, there's always the exceptions to the rule. People who get struck by lightning and other things like that that live and those types of things. But again, those are more exceptions. Generally, your body can handle a little bit, but once you get above a certain point, it becomes fatal. Now, the other thing that I want to remind people about is that if you do see a down line, kind of as we wrap up, if you do see a down line, be sure to call 911. If you see a down line, they will be able to contact our control center to be able to get that shut down, and we can get some of our linemen out there as quickly as possible to take care of that. But if you do experience, maybe if there's a car wreck, is one that often happens where into a utility pole and the lines are laying down either over the car or near the car. If you're not in immediate danger in a car accident situation, to avoid that electrical shock, what you're going to want to do is stay in your vehicle. Okay, as long as it's safe to stay in your vehicle, it's not on fire and anything like that, you're going to want to stay there until it's been cleared by our linemen that things are shut down and that there's no longer a risk of electrical shock. Now, maybe, but if you do find that there's a fire or some other immediate danger that you do need to get out of the vehicle, remember to get out of your vehicle, and you're going to want to actually jump. You're going to want to jump onto the ground, and then you're going to want to shuffle your feet, okay? Because what you want to do is not allow a pathway for that electrical shock to happen. We've been talking about ways that you can have a shock and those types of things, but in a car accident situation, that's the one that people think of most when they think of electric utilities, and as a cooperative, we often get the question of how do you handle a car accident that has happened and power lines are down. Again, you're going to want to open the car door. You're going to want to jump with both feet landing at the same time, because again, what we're wanting to do is create a ground. You're trying to create a way to get to the ground without allowing the current to run through you from one point to another. And then once you're actually on the ground, you're going to want to actually shuffle your feet. Okay, so again, the goal here is to not allow one foot to be off the ground while the other foot is on the ground, because what ends up happening is current will run into you, and as soon as you touch the ground with the other foot, you'll result in a shock. So you can actually find all this information out on our blog. We've actually written a whole blog about this at mtmc.com/blog, and you can actually see sort of a steps on how to get out of your vehicle. You'll also be able to get a hold of some more resources in the event of an accident, of what you need to do, the steps you need to take so that you can be aware of it. So again, next week we are hoping to be live. Typically we record the podcast on Wednesdays, and so what we've decided to do is we're going to test it out a little bit of recording this live on Facebook, and that way you can kind of see a little more of a live action. So hopefully you'll tune in for that. Josh will be back next week, and we'll kind of have a discussion over what's going on here at the cooperative. And just as a reminder, annual meeting is coming up August 26th. Registration starts at 7:30 and closes at 10. When you register, you'll be entered in for a various number of drawings. You'll also be entered in for a chance to win the grand prize of a F-150. Again, it's one of our used vehicles that we are retiring from the fleet. This year, we've also got a chainsaw and safety package to give away. Again, we've got some great things going on at the cooperative, and so we hope that you're going to show up for that. If in the meantime, if you've got any questions for us, be sure to send those to us. You can either email us at info@mtemc.com. If you've got questions or things that you'd love to know about and would like to hear a podcast about, you can also contact us on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We're on all 4 channels, so you can always get a hold of us there. So thanks again for listening, and be safe out there, and we hope you have a great week.